Hey there, bookkeeping side hustle community. It's Kate. Welcome to this first new live stream of 2025. What bookkeepers need to know about 1099s, everyone's favorite topic. And yes, Barb, I already see you in the chat a minute before we started. You are in the right place. We are live now. We are here with our guest instructor, Shannon Ballman Theis. I have met her in person at conference, I think a couple times.
Yes.
She is a wonderful example of someone who started in the accounting space and niched down into payroll expertise. God bless her. I would never want to do that, but some people are crazy, and she has built a firm in a niche related to payroll. And 1099s aren't payroll, but they're related. And so she obviously has had to develop expertise on this year-end process where businesses are paying other people, right? And contractors get paid where you would have to issue a 1099. So it was a no-brainer to ask her to come teach us about the latest updates for 2025. Lots of 1099 rules are pretty general. So if you're watching this in the future, I would guess the vast majority is still going to apply. But always pay attention to the links below in the description to stay in touch with her if you're watching this 3 years from now, and you want to make sure you have the most updated information, and also make sure that you're in the bookkeeping side hustle group or in her payroll restoration Facebook group, which there'll be a link to that below. That's kind of the admin to get us started. I'm really grateful that you're here, Shannon, and I know that you're going to give a more thorough introduction of yourself, but anything you'd like to say before we get started?
No. Yeah, let's just get started because there's definitely a lot to cover, and I want to try and get through it as quickly as possible so that if anybody has questions on the live stream, I can get to as many questions as possible.
That's great. And y'all, as you're watching live, I'm going to be putting some links that she's going to mention into the chat. So keep your ears on, keep your hands on your mouse so we can get some of these resources. I'm going to add your presentation to the stage. So I hope everyone can see that. And then how about everyone who's watching live, chime in with where you're watching from just to get some chat going. Let us know if you have any questions. I'll field them for her while she is going. And some of y'all might ask a question that we ask in the middle of the presentation. Some we might save to the end. So, all right, Shannon, take it away.
All right. So 1099 season.
Yeah.
What do you need to know? And it really is a season, and lately I kind of feel like that season just hasn't ended. So I am Shannon Ballman Theis, self-described, and other people will describe me too as a payroll expert. I actually started being known for 1099s before I became known as a payroll expert because I was talking with a bunch of other accountant friends of mine, and there always are a lot of questions that get asked in groups that get right and wrong answers, and 90% of the questions that get asked can be answered by just reading the instructions. So flippantly I said, what, do they need us to read the instructions to them? And I got a resounding yes. So then I started like recording myself reading the 1099 instructions, and that's how my YouTube channel was born.
That's funny. I've seen some of those. So yeah, like people need to read. Like we're not just doing numbers, folks. Let's all be able to read. For sure.
Well, and sometimes the instructions are vague. And I think they're vague on purpose because the more you try to be extremely detailed about your answer, it just gets really, really super long because, well, it could be this or it could be that, or it could is so I do get on calls with people individually and answer questions if I have to.
Yep.
But I do really get in and give people good answers in the different groups when there's a 1099 question. And I do own 3 different companies. I have Payroll Restoration, which is my main company where I help people fix payroll compliance issues. and it doesn't matter what year it's for. I will fix going back as far as people need fixed. I have River Valley Accounting, where we process regular payroll on an ongoing basis for people. And then Dodd Consulting, which is where I do the consulting and the training, and I've got my payroll courses.
Okay. We've got
So
links to a lot of those, y'all, in the YouTube description as well. And I just tossed the Facebook community in the chat as well for those of y'all watching live, if y'all want to scroll through the chat to find that.
perfect. And then just the typical disclaimer that we're not registered investment, legal, or tax advisors. The information that we're providing is accurate at the time that we're recording, but because tax laws change frequently, please seek the advice of a tax, payroll, or legal professional before making business decisions, and read the current instructions if you can. All right. So then we're just gonna cover just different things with the 1099s, 1096s, 1099K. We're gonna spend a little bit of extra time on, and what to do if there are reporting errors or people refuse to provide a W-9. All right. There's a lot of different types of 1099s. I just listed a bunch of the more common and forms of the 1099, but most of the time, we as bookkeepers are involved with the 1099 NEC, 1099 miscellaneous, sometimes the interest and dividend 1099s. We don't ever fill out a 1099K. However, we need to know what goes on a 1099K so that we are doing the best job possible for our client so that their vendors don't have double reported income. So, 1099 is an informational return. I call it a tattletale form because we're reporting to the IRS what we paid and to who we paid it to different service providers during the year. So, 1099 miscellaneous is used to report various types of income paid, and it's to report deceased employee pays, commercial fishers, rents, royalty, crop insurance, golden parachute payments, and non-qualified deferred compensation. And a 1099 NEC is really only used to report non-employee compensation. And both the 1099 miscellaneous and NEC are what's called continuous use forms now as of 2022. And I did verify this for somebody else. If you need to report something on a 1099 NEC or 1099 miscellaneous for 2020, you can still use this new revised form. You don't have to go find the previous forms.
Okay.
And there is one thing that is the same on both the 1099 miscellaneous and NEC, and it is this checkbox for payer made direct sales totaling 5,000 or more of consumer products and to recipient for resale. If you are somebody who sells products to a store, you follow the same, if they're an LLC or S corp, whether you send a 1099 or not. But if they would be somebody who gets a 1099, you click this box, and that's all you put on there. And then the 1099 NEC also has it, but on here it's box 2. And I think everybody kind of knows where to put the information on the boxes. Like, the only thing that I'm really going to spend any time on right here is if you are an attorney, in box 10 is the proceeds paid to an attorney, and that is only for settlements. If you pay an attorney for contracts or for different things that the attorney provides a service to you for, that goes on the 1099 NEC as non-employee compensation.
Okay, I see. So just hiring, that's actually good to know. I know that I knew that attorneys are treated differently, but I'm not in the middle of any sort of a lawsuit. So if I'm hiring a lawyer, it's like we're they're going to be a contract. They're going to be a consultant for me, right? That's the way to think of them. Just like my photographer or my web designer, they're providing me with their expertise. We're not talking about settlement funds. So the settlements are the MISC.
Yes,
99 MISC.
that's
Barb
true.
has a question that's actually relevant right now, related to the continuous use form. So she wrote,
Okay.
"Do you mean can we use current forms specifically for 2020 or for 2020 and any more recent years?" Like you said, the number 2020, is 2020 important?
No, it was just an example
Yeah,
because
that's what I
it,
thought.
so if you see in this box here, it says revised January
Aha,
2022. So that prior to 2022, there were it was a 2021
great.
and
Yeah,
1099 NEC or miscellaneous 2020. Like it had the calendar year on it. The example for 2020 was just
got it.
an example that it can be used for any year that you have to do a return.
So if Barb's helping someone from 2015, she can put 2015 in that after the numbers 20. She can put 15.
Yes.
Cool. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Because
Keep
I
going.
actually went through my file cabinets and threw away all of my 1099 miscellaneous and NEC that I
Because you
could.
don't need them, because you can type in the year.
Right.
Got it. Okay, cool. Hope that answers you, Barb. All right, so we got MISC and NEC. What else?
So the Form 1096, I've seen a lot of questions about like e-file services that are e-filing your 1099s, and people are like, but they're not doing a 1096. A 1096 is only needed if you're mailing and paper filing 1099s, which is getting to be less and less common, especially the last couple of years where they've changed the requirements on how many forms you can still paper file. So a 1096 is not needed when you transmit forms electronically. It is only needed when you are mailing 1099s in, and it's treated like a cover sheet.
Hmm.
So let's say you mail in 5 1099 NECs and you realize that you needed to also send in there was like one more 1099 NEC and maybe one or two 1099 miscellaneous that need to be sent in. You would create a new 1096 for each batch that you submit,
Yeah.
and it only includes the information for that batch.
So I have a question. I have always used, I think in the entirety of my business, I've always used an app called Track 1099, which has been purchased by Avalera. And I thought that, and I think I've only ever done electronic filings. I haven't had anyone that didn't have a contractor cough up an email, right? So I'm not mailing anything, but I swear that they were generating a 1096 for me. You say do not use. Is it can we still use it?
Well,
Because they're doing
you
it for me. I swear. Because I'm not smart enough to have like gone and like found this out. It was like, here's your 1099s and here's download your 1096 for the records. And I would save them in my client's file. I would give this to the client.
yeah, but I'm saying that a 1090, so it's kind of just like payroll software companies provide a W3. It's as a courtesy because it is not ever a 1096 and a W3 are never submitted to the
Okay.
IRS or Social Security.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Well,
So,
the software that I'm using to do I mean, just so everybody knows, I try to be out of the 1099 business, so you can too. If you don't want to do this work, you don't have to. But I have to do them for myself, for anyone I hire. So at least I know I have to do that many. But the Track 1099 app was doing these 1096s automatically.
okay. And that's good to know because I also use Track 1099, and I
pretty
never
sure.
looked to see if there was a 1096 because I knew I didn't need it.
Well, I swear this image is
And it
familiar to me. If anyone else has any experience with this concept of the 1096 cover letter, which is just kind of a summary of all the 1099s behind it, y'all chime in on the chat. Now, we don't need to get hung up here, Shannon. We can keep going,
yeah.
but it's interesting to know that it's kind of not required. I love that it is required for the mailed ones, and that makes sense because the computer robots haven't told the IRS about it yet. Like if it's only done on paper ever, then the IRS might not ever even know, even though you mailed them.
Yes. All right. So who submits 1099s and when are they due? Only business owners who have independent contractors or freelancers will do a 1099 NEC. 1099 miscellaneous will be for rent paid to another business that is not a property manager. And business owners who pay attorney fees, those are the most common reasons for submitting a 1099. And the due dates are a little tricky, and like I laid them all out here, but I also put them in this chart that you guys might want to grab a screenshot of. So, 1099 miscellaneous is for rent, royalties, prizes, awards, substitute payments, deceased payroll, and different things. And it's due to the recipient. All the 1099s are due to the recipients by January 31st. But 1099 miscellaneous forms are not due to the IRS until February 28th if they're being mailed in, or March 31st if they're filed electronically. But 1099 NEC is due to the recipient and to the IRS both on January 31st, whether it's being mailed in, e-filed, whatever. And this is the due date discrepancy is the reason that they reactivated the 1099 NEC and pulled that off of the miscellaneous form, because what was happening was there was a lot of 1099 NECs that would be filed after January 31st with 1099 miscellaneous, most likely reporting rent. But all of the 1099s could be subject to penalty because the IRS system only allows for one due date per form. So if something that was reporting non-employee compensation was reported in the same batch as something reporting rent, then all of the returns would be late.
I have one comment, y'all. She mentioned about taking a screenshot of this. Shannon, you're willing to share this presentation, right? If people download the decision tree, is that right?
Yes. Yep. At the end, you'll get a link to request a decision tree to be emailed to you. I will also include the slides since registration wasn't required for this presentation. So the only way to get the slides is to sign up for the decision tree.
And I want y'all to pay attention to Shannon. Don't download this yet, but I want you to click this link in case some of y'all have to go. I'm going to put it in the chat. Shannon, keep going. I'm putting the decision tree in the chat.
Okay. So, in 2023, the e-filing requirements changed for 1099s and W-2s and all of the other forms listed on this table. But it is required to e-file or face a penalty if you paper file 1099s and W-2s if there's more than 10 being filed of the following from this list of forms. So, say you've got 6 1099s and 5 W-2s, you have to e-file everything. It's an aggregation of all of this. So, sometimes you'll have a 1042S if you paid a contractor that lives outside the US. That's the equivalent of a 1099 NEC. And they're in a treaty company and they worked physically in the US. But if you filed any of these forms and there's more than 10 in total, they all have to be e-filed. And there's a lot of different e-file options. Kate talked about Track 1099 earlier. There's also Tax 1099, and I just saw that Hector Garcia put out a video.
Mhm.
I will grab that link, Kate, and add that to, or send that to you so that you can add it in the description, so that if people want to integrate like QBO with Tax 1099, Hector made a really good video showing you how to do that.
While you're going through, I'm gonna try to find that video too right now. I saw him share that on his Facebook group.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then there's eFile for Biz, which integrates with some software. And like this list is just 3 that I found really quickly and easily using a search. I personally have used Track 1099 and Tax 1099. I actually have accounts with both, but I only file 1099s with Track 1099. I use Tax 1099 for other things. And if you don't want to pay for a service, there are some ways that you can file for free, but they all require pre-planning. Like to set up with Fire requires a transmitter control code
Oh gosh.
that you need if you are going to be filing a large amount of forms and you want to file them using the old Fire system. And I think that only takes a couple of weeks to get the transmitter control code. However, Iris is the new e-file, and it requires a different transmitter control code than what you have for the Fire system. And I believe that has to be applied for by August. I don't use either one of these 2 options. Because I don't do that many 1099s either anymore. And I just always used Track 1099.
Is that a profitable business to be filing hundreds of 1099s for a client?
It can be. It depends on how you bill. I personally bill between $25 and $50 per 1099 that I do,
Okay.
but I don't have like a base fee. I've seen other people say that they have a base fee and then they have a lower per form fee. I charge per form that I do. If it takes me longer than what my quote unquote standard process is, I like if I have to reconcile an account so that, or go and pull all of the data, I bill that differently than if the client is providing me with the numbers. Because you guys remember, I don't do bookkeeping at all.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. No bookkeeping. So some of my payroll clients do their own bookkeeping, and they'll provide me with the numbers. But say somebody provides me with access to their accounting software, and I have to go in and find out what the
Bleh.
1099 needs to be for. I charge extra for that. That's
Yeah, that's
above and
terrible.
beyond my per form fee.
Yeah. If any of y'all listening, how do y'all charge? That'd be interesting to just let everyone read what other people do. Yeah, that's. Is anyone doing hundreds where you have to have that special code to do it? That just sounds crazy.
You can
Those
do
are huge.
hundreds, and you
Those
can
are
do it
huge
in Track
businesses.
1099.
Yeah, and those are huge businesses. I mean, I'm like in my mind, I'm thinking, don't they have their own accounting department? If they have vendors above 100, those are I don't know. Whatever. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
1099s make me just itch. I just can't. I can't imagine. I would never take that job.
So this is the part
Uh
that
huh.
is by far
Uh huh.
the most confusing and added the most complexity to 1099s. Like when I started doing when I did start out doing bookkeeping, and so I was doing a lot of 1099s, and It was so much easier because hardly anybody paid vendors with contract or with credit cards or debit cards. And but now there's it, my next slide is just going to kind of blow your mind with how complicated just knowing what gets reported on a 1099K is so that you can exclude it from your 1099 NEC. And I am definitely not a when in doubt, send it out person because I have received like I call them duplicate 1099s
Extra income. Yeah, yeah.
because I had for one of my businesses, I used I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just stick to this
Stick to the
slide
slide.
and
Go
then
for it. Go
I'll
for it.
get to that when I get to it. Um but anybody that it is paid through a receives payment through a merchant service account or third party payer, you will receive your payment. They will take out a fee and then send you the money, or they send you the money and then take out the fee. But that is managed by the recipient of the money.
Mm-hmm. Stripe.
And there are some times where the money is paid by the sender, or where the electronic payment is initiated by the sender. Oh, I just realized I put these out of order. So you need to know when to exclude a payment from a 1099 NEC or 1099 miscellaneous. Anytime it's a credit or debit card payment where the recipient initiates the payment, and that can be you send an invoice with a ePay link, and then the person paying the invoice clicks the link and fills out their information, and everything happens that way. PayPal business, but not friends and family, because they're when you send friends and family, you're like bypassing the compliance piece of PayPal, and nobody pays a fee. Venmo business, not personal, again with the fee. The tricky part here is some ACH payments. And I don't know a good way to like know what ACH payments are going to be excluded from a 1099 NEC because they're included on a 1099K, other than relying on the person who you're paying to tell you. Because I used Ignition for a lot of years, and ACH payments are run through payment rails in Ignition, so they're included on a 1099K. So every time somebody sends me a 1099 NEC, when I was using Ignition, it essentially duplicated the revenue that I received from that person, because both Ignition and my client were reporting that on a 1099.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have to, send them a message saying, hey, you sent me a 1099 NEC. I shouldn't get one because this is being included with the payments that I'm receiving from Ignition. And I would send a link to the article. And some people would zero out that 1099 and some wouldn't. And so when they wouldn't, then my tax preparer would have to inflate my revenue and inflate my expenses so that the net income would stay the same and all of the revenue would be reported to the IRS, which is just a bunch of extra hoops to jump through. And in my opinion, the 1099 thresholds are going the wrong way. The 1099K thresholds are being lowered, but so for 2024, the minimum where the third party payer is required to send one is 5,000 and any number of transaction. and backup withholdings are suggested, but not able to be enforced for 2024. And in 2025, the gross payments exceeding 2,500 and any number of transactions. And the beginning in 2025, the IRS will assess penalties for failure to withhold and pay in backup withholdings on Form 945, which we are going to discuss in a couple of minutes. And after 2026, any 1099 or 1099K is required if gross payments exceed $600. And like the $600 threshold for 1099 miscellaneous and NEC is something that was established in the 1950s.
Yeah, already too low.
And it's way too low. I thought, the 20,000 that it used to be for 1099K, I thought that would be the ideal amount because like $600 is not nearly as much money in 2025 as it was in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to, make a note that many third-party payment processors can and usually do send 1099s below the minimum threshold because my husband, who also has a business, he primarily accepted his payments only through credit card. And back even when the threshold was 20,000, if he had 10 or 15,000 in credit card, he would get a 1099K from the payment processor.
It's probably just easier for their computer code to be written to just send it all. They're summing some number, they're grabbing that number from a field and then the address and sending it all out. So that's tough.
Yeah. And 1099K forms are also continuous use, and you report the amount per month on them.
Okay.
But that's just how to read it because we as accountants don't ever fill out a 1099K.
Exactly. I was going to say, but we don't have to do that. We don't.
No, like we have to spend so much time learning and knowing how a 1099K gets processed, but that's just so that we can figure out what we need to exclude when we're filing 1099 miscellaneous and NEC for our clients. So what can you do to make filing 1099s easy? I usually, when I was doing bookkeeping, I would start this process in October because I was usually a little bit slower back then. And it was like, I just decided that October was like the start of the new year for me.
Okay.
And so I would try to do all the pre-work that I could just to make January easier because January is hard already.
Mm-hmm.
And it is even harder when you're trying to make sure you've got all the W-9s from your clients' vendors. And because let's face it, the best practice is that nobody gets paid without a W-9, but we all know that happens. So, and then just take a look at the W-9s that your client has received to make sure that they're filled out correctly. You don't have to verify the information, but you do have to verify that it looks like the W-9 was correctly filled out. And I do have a whole video on that it's a link in the slides. I think it was also, I don't remember if it was a link I provided to you, Kate, or not, but it's on my YouTube channel. And then how to respond when a vendor refuses to send a W-9. It sometimes helps them to know why you need the W-9. So, explain that it's necessary for tax reporting purposes and that it's so that, because sometimes I would get people saying, oh, you don't need to send me a 1099. I'm an S Corp. Great. I need the W-9 that tells me that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I have to send you a 1099.
So that's the threat, right? Like, oh, okay, cool. Well, if you don't, great. If I don't get one, I'm sending you a 1099, and they're gonna freak out because they're like, no, I don't need one. I'm not supposed to have one. I'm not gonna. I don't. It starts to get weird if S corps are getting 1099s. So threaten that.
Yeah. Well, and offer, communicate clearly and professionally. Let them have, because sometimes people's resistance to submitting a W-9 is they don't want to email it. They want to send it somehow secure. So give them the option of uploading it in a portal, and Track 1099 does allow you to pay for an additional service where they manage the W-9s for you.
I agree
And
with that. I think it's worth it.
yeah, and I was just starting to look into that when I quit doing bookkeeping. I don't do it anymore. And another thing that you can and should do. I actually just saw a post in a group, I don't remember what group it was, where they submitted the W or the 1099s with refused without a EIN on it, and then they got a tax bill for 24% of for backup withholding. So the IRS is expecting, a 945 to be filled out and backup withholding to be reported and remitted on anybody who doesn't
Golly.
have a EIN on the 1099 that get sent in. And I mean, document your efforts to show that you did your due diligence in requesting a W-9. And the backup withholding is, I have paid invoices without, like with a deduction for the backup withholding. And do you know what I received within 3 business days?
The W-9.
A phone call. What can I do to get the rest of my money? Oh, okay, I just need the W-9. Oh, that's all you need? Okay, no problem. But they were like, nope, I don't need to send you one because I don't get a 1099. So sometimes just the threat of withhold, like I have withheld backup withholding from so many different vendor checks when I was the one responsible for sending out the payments. And I have never had to fill out a 945 because I have never had to remit backup withholdings. And a backup withholding return is pretty easy to fill out. You put in your information, and then like the amount that was withheld, like the total payments, amounts withheld, and then in this chart down here, this is how much backup withholding was withheld for each month.
Let me jump in real quick. Lee Chamberlain is asking if this will be available after the live is over. Yes, all of my stuff is always live on this YouTube channel, so there's no registration. You don't have to give me an email. If you want the slides, though, where you can like maybe look at them a little closer than maybe what you'll see on your YouTube on your phone, right? Fill out Lee that decision tree link. I'll put it in again, y'all. This is how you're going to stay connected with Shannon. Get the decision tree, but also get the slides. So I'm putting that again if you've got to go, Lee. Hold on one second. Shannon, take back over.
All right. So how do incorrect 1099s get fixed? So like if you're the recipient of a 1099 that was issued incorrectly or there was wrong information on it, sometimes the error is caught early enough that the business can just correct the 1099 before things are submitted to the IRS. But it's super, super simple to fix a 1099. It's the same form. You just mark correct. You just check the corrected box and resubmit it with only the correct information. It's not like other returns where you have to report the previously reported and the
Yeah.
corrected information and then do the math with the differences and stuff. All you do is you check corrected at the top, and then you fill it out with the correct information. So let's say 1099 got sent that included information that would also appear on a 1099-K and you just want to zero it out,
Okay.
you click corrected and then you put 0 in the box that was filled out on the original one. And then the IRS will know that that overrides the amount. If, let's say, you sent one for $1,000 and realized it should have been for 500, if you don't click corrected and you fill one out for 1,000 and one out for 500,
15.
they'll add them together and then
Yep.
1,500 is what gets reported. So click, if you're doing something that's a corrected return, it's super important to make sure that that corrected gets fixed or gets checked. And in October is usually when the IRS will send out the CP 2100 or 2100A, and it's usually sent because the taxpayer name and ID don't match the IRS records, or a name or ID is missing. Usually this happens when the business is an LLC and they've got their business name on the W-9. You also need their personal name because their tax return will be filled out as Shannon Theis instead of payroll restoration if I was a LLC.
Yeah.
But if I also put my EIN on my Schedule C, then the IRS would be able to tie that together. But it's always important that you compare your payee records to the notice. If the notice and the records match, then you send what's called a B notice to the payee. And if it's obvious that the TIN or is incorrect, then backup withholdings need to begin until you get a new W-9. And what you should never do is call or write to the IRS and say, "Hey, I fixed my records," because this the CP 2100 or CP 2100A are just, they're notices that the IRS sends out that are for your information only. There's nothing that you need to act on and report back to the IRS. The only actions you need to do is to verify your records and reach out to the recipient to get a corrected W-9s or send them a B notice.
Hopefully none of us are going to have to deal with that. That sounds confusing. And you should
Well-
call Shannon and go into her Facebook group if you have to deal with that. That's starting to get down into like weeds, I think, which is exactly why you have that's why you're in business, right?
Yes.
These obscure, if everyone was in the 85% normal, then you wouldn't have you would be broke. But you get to help us with the kind of edge cases, right? Like if you, I don't know, that's kind of what keeps running through my mind is like most of this is going to be simple, and then there's going to be that remaining 15, 10, 5% that are the ones that take as much time as like all your other 1099s, right? That's what stinks about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the people getting the CP 2100 is, it's pretty common because, like, let's just say that, because I have payroll restoration is my DBA, but if somebody fills out my 1099 with payroll restoration instead of Payroll Solutions Plus, which is the name of the business that the IRS has for me,
Mhm.
they'll get a notice saying that my tax ID number doesn't match the business name that I provided. But I'm an S corp, so nobody should be sending me a 1099 anyway.
Yeah.
But that's just a really good example that I can use, because, and some people do fill out their W-9s incorrectly. And so, like, whenever I was managing, when I did bookkeeping, I did construction bookkeeping, and I got so many handwritten W-9s that were not legible. It's not even funny because it's just like, if you work in construction, you like lose the ability to write legibly. I think so. But on the slide right now is just the contact information. Um,
Yeah,
for
yeah, and
me.
lots of those are gonna, if you don't wanna have to write it down, most, I think everything on that except her phone number, I didn't put that on the YouTube description, just because I thought you might get spammed, are on links in the YouTube description below in the YouTube description. Um, so definitely stay in touch with her. Make sure you say hi to her at conferences. She's a frequent conference attendee and it's fun to hang around. You can't miss her. She usually travels with her husband and they're fun and
And we're both
um,
tall, so you can see
yeah,
us in a
they're
crowd.
not small people. They're they, you have to stand like this. Um, so, and then yes, the decision tree. So the best course of action when it comes to issuing 1099s is to try to grab that decision tree and it walks you through like, did you pay with a credit card or with a check? You know, and you go down and it's like yes or no, do they need a 1099? So um, could we get into some Q&A, Shannon?
Yeah, yep. And I do just want to say the only like special offer that I'm doing with my 1099 webinars now is if this training wasn't enough and um, Jennifer Diamond did create a website called 1099problems.io, and it the first 99 people that use Payroll Queen 1099 will get 10.99% off their first order. So 1099 Problems IO is a paid website, but Jennifer's theme is friends don't let friends waste time on 1099s.
Cool. Let me get some of these questions. I'm going to start with one back a couple minutes ago, and then I'm going to go down. We're going to try to get as many as we can, but again, emphasizing jump on her payroll restoration Facebook group because probably most of y'all listening are on Facebook. So I got a question. Barb asks, I have a client who is a bicycle manufacturer and they sublet their old office. Do they have an obligation or is it their subletter's responsibility to file 1099s?
Their subletter would give them a 1099 miscellaneous for rent paid, because the only exception where you do not need to provide a 1099 for rent is if you're paying it directly to a property management company or somebody whose sole business is renting or leasing office space.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna move quick. Um, yeah, Diamond Osmond says that 600 bucks has been the threshold since the dawn of time, which is even
Yes.
further back than you said, Shannon.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question: does Intuit count as a payment processor? So if a client makes a payment via ACH through Intuit payment processing, do they need to issue 1099s, or is Intuit the processor responsible?
So this is where knowing what goes on a 1099K gets so incredibly confusing, because Intuit does not include ACH payments on their 1099Ks. They only include the debit and credit card payments, but some processors, because they put the ACH payments also on the credit card rails, the payment rails, then there is that they the ACH would be included. I think anytime anybody includes an ACH payment on a payment rail is wrong, because why do we need this unnecessarily complicated other thing that
Could
we
you
need
put
to
us?
do? And one thing that I did forget to mention, and I'm glad that this question triggered it. Um, so like for people who use Milio to
Mhm.
initiate accounts payable, even if they use a credit card to pay that bill, that is not on a payment rail, because it's an account payable vendor, not an accounts receivable vendor. So if somebody pay because the business that is getting that it, it matters if the business who is getting paid sets the payment up, or if the business that is
I see.
doing the payment
Yeah.
sets it up.
Yeah.
Because anytime the business that is doing the paying sets up the payment process, that is not
Not
included
yeah.
on a payment rail.
Yep, yep, yep. I think everyone should press if you're watching a replay, press pause and go listen to her sentence again, because it's hitting me, the difference between the initiator or me when I send a client my invoice from Ignition. I'm saying they're not doing accounts payable at that point. I'm doing my accounts receivable, and so those payments are included on my 1099K. Very, very, very interesting. The same question about so Intuit, you're saying for whatever reason their rails are different and their ACH doesn't include credit cards. They asked about Anchor though, and I am going to guess that Anchor is more like Ignition and their ACHs are on rails. But what is the right answer?
I
Or do you
don't
know?
know.
So we
I
got
would
an email
recommend
support.
going to the Anchor support page
Yeah.
and asking that question. And not their Facebook group. You can ask it on their Facebook group. And I have seen conversations on there, but I off the top of my head, I don't know that answer. But go to the Anchor website, go to their FAQ or their question page, ask, or their help page, ask that question in there, because I want to say that they do not include ACH on their payment rails.
Interesting.
So
Okay. The reason why I was is because like I feel like Ignition is so much newer than Intuit Payments, and my thought was like the older school apps maybe don't, and the newer school ones do. But I think for all of us, so it sounds like we have to be asking our processors if they're including ACH or not. Got another one from Sandra. She has several doctors who have purchased medical equipment, medical and healthcare payments. Based on the 1099 miscellaneous, how do you know what vendors to send this to? Huh. So medical and healthcare payments is a MISC category. Did I miss that?
I think if I'm understanding her question, she is saying that they're selling equipment.
Saying doctors are purchasing equipment.
Okay. Yeah. So if the the doctors purchasing the equipment don't issue a 1099, it would be if they're that box 7 on the miscellaneous and box 2 on the NEC. If it's, if they're selling, if they're reselling, if they're purchasing for resale, that box would get checked on a 1099. But it doesn't sound like that's the case. So doctors purchasing equipment, there is no 1099 requirement generated with that action.
Okay. Debbie Almong is asking, do you have a rule of thumb for updating W-9s for long-term vendors?
No, but sometimes, like, I would, if they wanted me to change an address or anything, and if anything on the vendor file would change, I would say, great, I need a new W-9.
Okay.
And I do that for W-4s too. So like if an employee wants a address change or name change or anything, I require a new set of federal and state W-4s for that. So that's just a bonus payroll related thing, not a 1099 related
Yeah,
thing.
Barb, our first commenter, she's studious, staying with us the whole time. She's asking, can you clarify what payment rails are?
It is it's what merchant services use to move money from point A to point B. And like Intuit has set up their own payment system to move money from point A to point B. But I know because I was using Ignition, I know Ignition uses Stripe.
Yes, that's true.
So Stripe is the payment rails in that case. So, and Stripe sets their rules. And so ACH is included in on the same movement from point A to point B as credit cards are. But with Intuit, credit cards and debit cards are on separate rails than anything that is like a ACH or a regular check.
I feel like Stripe is getting like tied to so many money moving apps right now. Like there's lots of fintech companies who are building, who are laying some sort of user interface over Stripe to do, like, I wonder what like Financial Sense is using, because you can do billing now for them. Do you know, are they using, have you found out what they've been
They're
using?
not using Stripe. They are using something tropical sounding. It's like Rain Tree.
Huh. Okay. Interesting.
It's
Okay.
something I've never heard of
Never
before.
heard of. Okay. Okay. All right. Melanie is asking a question about film. Contractors in film production commonly add a fee for their equipment use. Historically, this fee has been added to 1099 MISC to separate it from services on the NEC. Is that correct?
That depends. Because it's a really good question. And the sigh was, how can I give a short answer that describes what happens? So if it's rental, like if it's a separate line item on the invoice for the equipment rental, that would go on the 1099 miscellaneous box 1 for rent. If it's not, if it just says, if it's one fee that includes everything, and video and equipment rental is one of those things, then it would all go in the NEC. The other part that I do want to mention with this is, because I worked in construction, there was a lot of, like, the roofer, you pay for their services and the roofing material. It's all one. Nothing's really separated out. So the material and the service will be included on the 1099 NEC. However, what I've run into sometimes is that the business owner who's paying the service provider will buy the material or reimburse the person for the materials separately. And whoever retains control over the store receipt, and I'm using store receipt super general, whoever retains that store receipt is who can claim the deduction on their business return. So, for example, you hire an interior designer to stage a unit, and they purchase a whole bunch of, pillows and decorations and different things, and they get reimbursed, and then they turn over the receipts to the business that is paying them. They don't have the receipts anymore, so you do not include those purchases on their 1099. But if they keep the receipts and essentially they still own the things that were purchased, then that does get included on their 1099 NEC.
This is why I stay out of this work. It's possible.
And that's why doing just, like, I was trying to keep this to like 30 or 45 minutes, but before we began, I told Kate it would be hard.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten through all the questions. I think we're going to have a lot more questions in this month, y'all. This is going to be the hot and heavy month, all the way through the end of the month. Your processes will, if you're new to this business, your processes will be bad. You'll be thinking, how can I avoid this next year? Continuous improvement. I mean, Shannon stunk at this for years, and then like now, she's an expert, right? So
we're going to. Would you believe that I used to get the free 1099s from the IRS? Pull them apart because they're all like perforated. I would pull them apart, I would sort them, and then I would like run them through my printer and print them. Don't do that,
Don't
guys.
do that. Don't do that. So you'll get better. You'll get better at the getting the W-9s ahead of time, all this stuff. Just so as long as you're improving, know that you're like everyone goes through some like clobbered feelings during some 1099 seasons. But we'll work together to get better, to figure out good processes, to figure out how to charge. Like the first thing I learned was like I didn't charge enough for this zoo. Like we're like, and the business owner has to pay. They don't know either, right? So be confident in charging. Come to Shannon's group. Come to the Bookkeeping Side Hustle group to get that confidence you need to learn about pricing this stuff. It's valuable. It's kind of boring and nitty gritty, but it's part of what we as an industry do, and our clients want us to have this knowledge. And you can start to talk amongst ourselves about different ways we can monetize this knowledge, whether it's you outsource your 1099 work, or you are preparing, you're charging for it like throughout the year for each W-9 collected. I don't know if there's different ways to do it, but let's all just get better at this. And I'm just so grateful for you, Shannon, for what you have taught. I know we're going to have more questions. She's very active in my group, so you can tag her there or just go straight to her specific technical group that's going to be dealing with all sorts of payroll related questions. Stay in contact with her on LinkedIn, y'all. I have in the description, I have her LinkedIn profile and her Twitter profile and her YouTube channel. Those are all great ways to stay just sort of in her orbit. So that way you remember her like, oh yeah, that's the gal I need to talk to. I'm in trouble. She's the one who's going to help me. So we're getting lots of thank yous here on the side, Shannon. You were great. And I guess hopefully I'll get to see you sometime in 2025 at a conference.
Yeah, I'll be at Scaling again.
I hope to be there too. I know we've met there before. I'm waiting
Yep.
on those presentation announcements. See if I get to do a teaching session. So
I'll be a vendor there.
very,
So
very cool.
we're definitely
Okay.
going.
All right. Well, we're going to round up for now. I appreciate everyone who asked the great questions. I love these interactive chats, y'all. So y'all know where to find me. I'll be back doing more streams just like always. And adios for now. Bye.